The last person I ever expected to see at my door was standing there. 2 a.m., mascara bleeding down her rich brown face, sobbing uncontrollably. My boss. The woman who'd tormented me for 3 endless years. But what unfolded in the next 12 hours? That would shatter everything we both thought we knew. Jonas Vale's thumb hovered over the decline button, frozen. His phone screen glowed ominously in the darkness. 5th call. 20 minutes. His boss never called once, let alone 5 times. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. Daddy, who keeps calling? 8-year-old Ariana's voice cut through the tension, her dark eyes searching his face for answers. Natural curls pulled into 2 puffs, purple crayons smudged on her warm brown cheek. She looked up from her coloring book, sensing the shift in the room. Just work, sweetie, Jonas forced the words out, running his hand over his closely cropped hair. His heart hammered against his ribs. Nothing important. Then the phone buzzed again. But this time it wasn't a call. The text message made his blood run cold. Please help. I'm in trouble. Jonas exhaled slowly, his mind racing. Clara Hawthorne, his boss at Hawthorne Creative Group, no relation as she icily reminded everyone, was infamous for her ruthless demeanor. The elegant black woman in designer suits, hair always perfectly straightened, had systematically destroyed his work-life balance since day one. 3 years of hell. Late nights. Weekend demands. Relentless criticism. All while he struggled alone, raising Ariana after his wife abandoned them both. Yet something about those 2 words, I'm in trouble, clawed at something buried deep inside him. Something he couldn't ignore. Maybe it was that single word, please. A word Clara Hawthorne had never, ever used. Mrs. Patel is coming over, Jonas told Ariana, already dialing their neighbor. His decision made. Daddy needs to help someone. Even though they're mean to you? Ariana asked with devastating childhood honesty. Jonas knelt down, meeting his daughter's searching gaze. Especially then, baby girl. Grandma always said we help people not because of who they are, but because of who we are. What he didn't know yet was that this single decision would set off a chain reaction that would change everything. 30 minutes later, Jonas pulled up outside the Ember Room. Through the window, his stomach dropped. Clara sat slumped at the bar, arguing with the bartender, a young black man clutching what appeared to be car keys. Her normally perfect posture had collapsed entirely. The scene that unfolded when Jonas entered made his chest tighten with dread. I'm fine to drive, Clara insisted, words slurring dangerously. Her designer blouse was stained with what looked like red wine. Her usually immaculate hair falling loose, revealing natural texture she normally kept hidden. Do you know who I am? I could buy this entire establishment. Ma'am, I've called you a cab, the bartender, name tag reading, Dishon, replied firmly. I'm not giving you back your keys. Jonas. Clara's face lit up when she spotted him, relief flooding her dark brown features. Tell this person who I am. The bartender locked eyes with Jonas. A silent question passed between 2 black men who both understood the weight of this moment, the complexity no one else could see. She's my boss, Jonas admitted quietly, his voice steady despite the chaos. I'll take her home. I've got her. Dishon studied Jonas's face for what felt like an eternity before sliding the keys across the bar. You're a good man. Make sure she gets home safe. What Jonas couldn't see, what neither of them knew, was that across the street, concealed in shadow, one of their biggest clients stood watching. Watching everything unfold. A client who'd been considering pulling their multi-million-dollar account after Clara's brutal performance in today's meeting. And what Clara didn't know, couldn't possibly know in her intoxicated state, was that Jonas had just sacrificed the one night this month he'd planned to finish his story. The storybook for Ariana's birthday about a little black girl who could paint her dreams into reality. Gone. Why are you helping me? Clara mumbled as Jonas buckled her seatbelt, her dark eyes unfocused, searching his face desperately. I'm terrible to you. Jonas paused. In the dim light, he saw something he'd never seen before, vulnerability. Raw, unfiltered vulnerability beneath the smudged mascara tracking down her cheeks. So different from the woman who ruled their office with an iron fist. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally, his voice quiet but certain. And because everyone deserves a second chance. That's what my grandmother taught me before she passed. Those words would haunt Clara Hawthorne long after the alcohol wore off. Those words would ignite something neither of them could predict, setting in motion events that would test their characters in ways neither could possibly imagine. The drive to Clara's upscale penthouse was suffocating in its silence, broken only by her occasional mumbled directions. When they arrived, Jonas realized with growing dread that he'd need to help her inside. She could barely stand, let alone walk on her own. "Keys?" he asked gently, trying to keep his voice calm. Clara fumbled through her designer purse, one of those expensive brands his ex-wife used to covet obsessively, and produced a key card with trembling fingers. As they made their way through the lobby, the night doorman, an older black gentleman with silver-streaked hair, gave them a look that made Jonas's cheeks burn with shame. "It's not what you think," Jonas started desperately. The doorman just nodded with a knowing smile that somehow made everything worse. "Son, I've been working this desk for 20 years. I've seen it all. You're doing a kindness. That's all that matters." Clara's apartment was exactly what Jonas had imagined, and worse. Minimalist. Expensive. Cold as a tomb. Everything white, black, or chrome. Not a single personal photo visible. It felt more like a crime scene than a home, completely devoid of the warmth filling the apartment he shared with Ariana, with its colorful artwork and family photographs covering every wall. "Bathroom!" Clara gasped urgently. Jonas helped her to what he hoped was the right door, then retreated to the kitchen, searching for water. As he opened the perfectly organized cabinets, something caught his eye. His breath hitched. A single photograph magnetized to the refrigerator. Clara, much younger, hair in long braids, standing with an older black woman who shared her features. Same high cheekbones. Same warm undertones. Both smiling in a way he'd never seen his boss smile. Genuine. Unguarded. "That's my mother," Clara said behind him, making him jump. She'd emerged from the bathroom looking marginally better but still unsteady. Makeup mostly wiped away, revealing natural beauty she usually hid beneath layers of armor. "She died 5 years ago today." The words hit Jonas like a physical blow. Suddenly everything about this night crystallized into terrible, perfect clarity. "I'm sorry," Jonas said, the words inadequate but sincere. "I lost my grandmother when I was young. She raised me after my parents passed. Those anniversaries never get easier." Clara took the water glass, their fingers brushing momentarily, and the contact sent an unexpected jolt through him. "Why are you being kind to me?" Her voice cracked. "I've been nothing but cruel to you." Before Jonas could answer, before he could process what was happening, Clara's phone rang, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale as death. "It's Gregory Harland," she whispered, terror flooding her eyes. "Their largest client." "Oh God." "Don't answer," Jonas advised quickly. "Not in your condition." But Clara was already accepting the call, switching instantly to a professional tone that barely concealed her intoxication, the desperation bleeding through every word. "Gregory, what a pleasant surprise." Jonas could hear the angry voice erupting on the other end. Words like unprofessional behavior and reconsidering our partnership cut through the air like knives. Clara's face crumpled as the full weight of what was happening crashed down on her. "Gregory, please, I can explain." Jonas surprised himself by gently taking the phone from her trembling hand, his heart racing but his voice steady. "Mr. Harland, this is Jonas Vale. I apologize for the interruption, but Miss Hawthorne has just received some devastating personal news and was trying to process it privately. I'm helping her get home safely. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting Monday to discuss any concerns you might have." The pause that followed felt like an eternity. Jonas could feel Clara's eyes boring into him, could feel the weight of her entire career balanced on this single conversation. Gregory's tone shifted, softened noticeably. Jonas continued, drawing on every ounce of empathy and communication skill he possessed, the same skills that made him excellent at his job despite being overlooked, despite being invisible. Somehow, impossibly, he not only smoothed things over but secured a tentative agreement for an expanded campaign. When he hung up, Clara was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Something between shock and disbelief and something else entirely. "You saved my career," she said quietly, her voice breaking completely. "After everything I've done to make your life difficult." Jonas shrugged, though his hands were still shaking from the adrenaline. "Like I said, everyone deserves a second chance." As he helped Clara to her bedroom, ensuring she had water and aspirin for the inevitable morning, Jonas wondered if she would even remember any of this tomorrow. In his experience, people like Clara Hawthorne didn't change overnight. They certainly didn't acknowledge moments of weakness. "I should go," he said, turning toward the door, exhaustion finally catching up to him. "My daughter is waiting." "Your daughter," Clara repeated, her voice suddenly small, fragile. "Ariana, right? The one whose recital I wouldn't let you attend last month." Jonas froze. She remembered that? "Yes." "I'm sorry, Jonas," Clara whispered, already drifting toward sleep, her words barely audible. "I'm so sorry." Jonas didn't respond. He'd heard drunk apologies before. They rarely meant anything in the harsh light of day. Empty words, forgotten by morning. As he drove home through quiet city streets, exhaustion settling into his bones like lead, Jonas prepared himself for Monday morning. Clara would undoubtedly pretend none of this ever happened. That's how these things always went. The powerful never acknowledged vulnerability to those beneath them. Never. What Jonas couldn't possibly know as he quietly thanked Mrs. Patel and checked on his sleeping daughter, pausing to adjust Ariana's bonnet and kiss her forehead, was that Clara Hawthorne lay wide awake in her expensive bed, staring at the ceiling in the darkness, making a decision that would transform both their lives forever. Monday morning exploded with the usual chaos of single parenthood: spilled cereal, missing homework, a last-minute scramble for the school bus. By the time Jonas arrived at the office, exhaustion had already claimed him, and the day hadn't even properly begun. He braced himself as he approached Clara's office, steeling his nerves, expecting either cold dismissal or outright hostility. Maybe even termination. What he didn't expect, what he could never have expected, was to find her waiting by his desk, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Good morning, Jonas," she said, her voice lacking its usual razor edge, replaced by something he couldn't quite identify. She looked impeccable again, hair back in its sleek style, makeup flawless on her brown skin, but something in her eyes was different. Something fundamental had shifted. "I got you coffee. Black with 1 sugar, right?" Jonas stared at her, completely speechless. In 3 years, Clara had never once remembered how he took his coffee, let alone brought him any. This felt like stepping into an alternate dimension. "Thank you," he managed cautiously, accepting the cup as if it might be poisoned, as if this might be some elaborate trap. "I'd like to speak with you in my office when you have a moment," she continued, her usual commanding tone softened into something almost resembling a request. Almost. As Jonas followed her, he noticed the entire office buzzing with confused whispers, heads turning, eyes following their movement. Their coworker Tamika raised her eyebrows at him in a silent, desperate question. Clara Hawthorne bringing coffee to an employee? Something was definitely, catastrophically wrong. Once inside her office, Clara closed the door with deliberate care and turned to face him. She took a deep breath, her manicured hands clasped tightly in front of her, knuckles white with tension. "I remember everything about Friday night," she said without preamble, her voice steady but strained. "I want you to know that." Jonas shifted uncomfortably, his mouth suddenly dry. "It's really not necessary to." "It is necessary," Clara interrupted sharply, then softened. "You helped me when you had every reason not to. You protected my reputation with Gregory Harland. You were kind when I've been nothing but cruel to you." She moved to her desk and picked up a folder with trembling fingers. The sight of her hands, shaking, sent a chill down Jonas's spine. "I've been reviewing your personnel file all weekend. You've consistently been one of our top performers, despite the fact that I've denied your requests for flexible hours, overlooked you for promotion twice, and generally made your life a living hell." Jonas's heart pounded against his ribs. What was happening? My behavior has been inexcusable, she continued, her dark eyes meeting his directly, unflinching. Professionally and personally. I've been taking my own pain out on others, especially you, and it stops today. She handed him the folder with steady hands now, her decision clearly made. Inside was paperwork for a promotion to senior creative director. A position 2 levels above his current role. Jonas's vision blurred as he tried to process the words. This comes with a 40% salary increase and flexible working hours, Clara explained, watching his face carefully. You'll report directly to me, but you'll have autonomy over your projects and your schedule. You'll never have to miss another one of Ariana's events because of this job. Jonas stared at the papers, his mind reeling. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of fever dream. Why? The word escaped before he could stop it. Clara's professional facade cracked like shattered glass. Because you deserve it. Because I've been punishing you for having what I lost. A family that needs you. A daughter who looks at you like you hung the moon. For the first time in 3 years, Jonas saw Clara not as his tyrannical boss but as a person, broken, grieving, desperately trying to rebuild herself from ruins. Your mother, he said softly, understanding flooding through him. Clara nodded, turning to look out the window at the city skyline, her shoulders tense. She was everything to me. When she died, I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense. I resented anyone who had priorities outside this office. She turned back to face him, and Jonas saw tears threatening to spill from her eyes. Especially you, with your daughter and your constant reminders that some things are more important than quarterly reports. Jonas thought about all the times he'd had to choose between his daughter's needs and Clara's impossible demands. All the school events missed. The bedtime stories cut short. The weekends sacrificed at the altar of her ambition. I don't expect you to forgive me, Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I want you to know that I'm not pretending Friday night didn't happen. It was a wake-up call I desperately needed. Before Jonas could respond, before he could formulate any coherent thought, his phone buzzed with a text from Ariana's school. His heart plummeted as he read it. Ariana's sick, he said, already gathering his things, panic rising in his throat. I need to go pick her up. In the past, this would have earned him a cutting remark about priorities and commitment, maybe even a threat about his job security. Instead, Clara nodded immediately, stepping aside to clear his path. Of course, take the rest of the day. Is there anything you need? Jonas paused at the door, still trying to process this new reality, this impossible transformation. No, I think we'll be okay. Jonas, Clara called as he was leaving, her voice catching. He turned back. I meant what I said. Things are going to be different around here. As Jonas rushed to his daughter's school, his mind spinning with questions, he wondered if this change of heart would last. People made promises in moments of clarity or gratitude, but they rarely followed through when the moment passed, when the crisis ended. What he didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know, was that Clara Hawthorne had spent the entire weekend confronting truths she'd been running from for 5 long years. That his simple act of kindness had cracked open a door she'd kept firmly shut since her mother's death. And that door, once opened, could never be closed again. 3 days later, Jonas was working from home while Ariana recovered from a nasty flu when his doorbell rang unexpectedly. The sound made him freeze, his heart skipping a beat. Opening the door revealed Clara standing awkwardly in the hallway of his modest apartment building, looking completely out of place. She held a large gift bag and what appeared to be a container of soup. Her presence here felt surreal, impossible. She looked different outside the office, almost unrecognizable. Hair in its natural curly state. Jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual power suits. Vulnerable. I hope I'm not intruding, she said, uncertainty flooding her features. I just wanted to check on Ariana. And you? Jonas invited her in, fascinated and disturbed in equal measure as the woman who commanded boardrooms with iron authority now stood nervously in his cluttered living room. Her eyes traveled across the family photos covering the walls. Pictures of him and Ariana, his grandmother, aunts and uncles at family reunions. She seemed to drink it all in, hungry for something she couldn't name. I brought chicken soup, Clara explained, holding out the container with slightly trembling hands. It's my mother's recipe. And some books I thought Ariana might enjoy while she's recovering. Before Jonas could respond, before he could process this impossible kindness, Ariana appeared in the hallway wrapped in her favorite blanket. Natural hair in twists, eyes still heavy with illness. "Daddy, who's here?" she asked, her voice hoarse from her sore throat. "This is Ms. Hawthorne," Jonas explained carefully, watching both of them with held breath. "My boss." Ariana's eyes widened in recognition, and Jonas wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "The dragon lady?" To his absolute astonishment, Clara laughed, a genuine, warm sound he'd never heard from her before. "Ever?" "Yes, the dragon lady," she confirmed, kneeling down to Ariana's level with unexpected grace. "Though I'm trying very hard not to breathe fire anymore." Ariana studied her with the frank curiosity only children possess, tilting her head thoughtfully. "Daddy says you're very smart, but you don't know how to be happy." Jonas closed his eyes in mortification. "Ariana, that's not exactly." "Your daddy is right," Clara interrupted gently, her expression softening in a way that made Jonas's chest tighten. "I forgot how to be happy for a while. But I'm learning again." The simple honesty of this exchange shifted something fundamental in the atmosphere. As Clara sat with Ariana, listening intently to the little girl explain the plot of her favorite book about a young black girl who becomes a scientist, Jonas observed a side of his boss he never knew existed. A side she'd buried so deep, he'd begun to think it was just a myth. Later, after Ariana had fallen asleep on the couch and Clara had helped Jonas clean up the dinner dishes, another surreal experience that felt like stepping through the looking glass, they sat at his small kitchen table with cups of tea. The silence between them felt heavy with unspoken words. "Thank you for coming," Jonas said finally, breaking the tension. It meant a lot to Ariana. Clara traced the rim of her cup with one finger, her nails natural and unpolished today, so different from her usual manicured perfection. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said Friday night. About second chances." She looked up at him, and the vulnerability clear in her dark eyes made his breath catch. "Do you think people can really change, Jonas? Or do we just become better at hiding who we really are?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to fully explore, loaded with possibilities that terrified them both. "I think," Jonas said carefully, choosing each word with precision, "that who we really are isn't fixed. We're shaped by our experiences, our choices, our pain, but we can choose to be shaped differently." Clara nodded slowly, processing his words. "My mother used to say something similar. Before she got sick, she was the kindest person I knew." Her voice cracked slightly. "She volunteered at the church, always had an open door for anyone who needed help. Watching her suffer changed me. I built walls to protect myself and didn't realize I was trapping myself inside them." Jonas thought about his own walls, constructed after his wife left him and Ariana, how he'd poured everything into being a good father and a reliable employee, never allowing himself to want anything more, to hope for anything beyond survival. "Maybe we both have some walls that need to come down," he suggested quietly, his heart racing. The look Clara gave him then, open, unguarded, hopeful, terrified, made something shift dangerously in his chest. What neither of them realized in that moment, what neither could possibly see, was that their story was just beginning. That Clara's transformation wasn't just about becoming a better boss, but about rediscovering the person she'd been before grief hardened her heart into stone. That Jonas's compassion had not only earned him a promotion but had opened a door to possibilities he'd long since stopped imagining for himself, stopped allowing himself to even dream about. In the months that followed, the office watched in stunned amazement as Clara Hawthorne became almost unrecognizable, still brilliant and demanding, but also fair, supportive, and occasionally even kind. They whispered about what could have possibly changed her, creating elaborate theories that never came close to the simple, devastating truth. The truth was that on a Friday night, when she was at her absolute lowest, Clara had experienced something she'd forgotten existed: unconditional kindness from someone who had every reason to turn his back on her. And in that moment, she'd glimpsed a version of herself she thought had died with her mother. A version worth fighting to reclaim. As for Jonas, he found himself thriving in ways he'd never imagined possible, both professionally and personally. With his new position and flexible schedule, he never missed another of Ariana's school events. The storybook he'd been writing for her birthday was not only finished but, with Clara's encouragement and connections, was being considered by a publisher who specialized in diverse children's literature. And if anyone noticed that the fearsome Clara Hawthorne now regularly joined Jonas and Ariana for weekend outings to museums, parks, and ice cream shops, they were wise enough not to comment on it directly, at least not where either of them could hear. But the whispers spread like wildfire. Something was happening. Something impossible. 6 months after that fateful Friday night, Jonas and Clara sat on a park bench, watching Ariana chase butterflies in the late spring sunshine. Her laughter rang out across the grass like music, like hope given voice. Do you ever think about how different things would be if you hadn't answered my call that night? Clara asked, her natural curls moving gently in the breeze, her voice thoughtful. Jonas considered the question, really considered it. Sometimes. But then I remember something my grandmother used to say. He paused, watching Ariana twirl in the sunlight. The most important moments in our lives often don't announce themselves. They just happen and we only recognize them in retrospect. Clara smiled, watching Ariana, who had now befriended another little black girl and was showing her how to make daisy chains, their heads bent together in concentration. Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman. She was, Jonas agreed, his voice soft with memory. She also would have liked you. Once you stopped being the dragon lady. Clara laughed, a sound that had become wonderfully, impossibly familiar over the past months, a sound he'd started to crave. I'm not sure I've completely shed the scales yet. No, Jonas admitted with a grin. But they're more like glitter now than armor. As they sat in comfortable silence, Jonas found himself thinking about the journey they'd taken, from adversaries to colleagues to friends to whatever they were becoming now. Something neither of them had put into words yet. Something that hung in the air between them during quiet moments like this one, electric and terrifying and inevitable. What Jonas didn't know was that Clara had spent the previous night staring at her mother's photograph, having a long overdue conversation with the woman who had taught her about love before pain made her forget everything. I think I'm ready, Clara said suddenly, her voice trembling slightly as she turned to face him. Jonas's heart stopped. Ready for what? He asked, though something in his expression suggested he already knew, hoped he knew. Ready to stop being afraid, she replied, her dark eyes holding his with fierce intensity. Ready to admit that what happened that night wasn't just about you saving my job or me becoming a better boss. She took a shaky breath. It was about two people who had built walls finding a door in them. Jonas's heart raced as he looked into her eyes, eyes that no longer held the cold calculation he'd known for years, but instead shone with something warm and genuine and absolutely terrifying. Something that looked remarkably like love. Clara, he began, but she shook her head quickly. Let me finish. I've spent my entire adult life convinced that vulnerability was weakness, that needing others was a flaw to be corrected. Her voice cracked. I pushed away anyone who might see past my defenses because I couldn't bear the thought of losing someone I cared about again. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling in her lap. But watching you with Ariana, seeing how your love for her makes you stronger, not weaker, it's changed everything I thought I knew. Jonas reached for her hand, entwining their fingers, both their hands the same warm brown tones, fitting together like puzzle pieces he'd never known were missing. For what it's worth, you've changed everything for us too, he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. Ariana used to ask why I always look tired. Now she asks when Miss Clara is coming over next. Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears that caught the afternoon light. And what about you, Jonas? What do you ask? The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility and terror and hope. In the distance, Ariana's laughter floated on the spring breeze. The whole world seemed to hold its breath. I ask, Jonas said softly, his heart in his throat, if you might consider being part of our story for more than just this chapter. Clara's answer came not in words but in the way she leaned forward, closing the distance between them, with a kiss that felt like both an ending and a beginning, like everything breaking and everything healing all at once. Like coming home to a place you never knew existed. 1 year to the day after that fateful Friday night, Jonas stood in the doorway of what had once been Clara's cold, impersonal apartment. Now it was transformed beyond recognition, family photographs covering the walls, Ariana's artwork proudly displayed, and the comfortable chaos of a home filled with love saturating every corner. Clara was in the kitchen attempting to recreate her mother's lasagna recipe, while Ariana helped by sprinkling far too much cheese on top, both of them laughing together. Neither of them had noticed him watching yet, and Jonas took a moment to savor the scene, to let it wash over him like a blessing he'd never dared to pray for. If someone had told him 2 years ago that his tyrannical boss would become the woman who made his daughter giggle uncontrollably, who looked at him as if he'd hung the moon, he would have thought they were delusional. Yet here they were, building something beautiful from the most unlikely, impossible beginning. Are you going to stand there all night, or are you going to help us with this culinary disaster? Clara called out, finally spotting him, her natural hair pulled back in a loose bun, a smudge of tomato sauce on her cheek. Jonas joined them in the kitchen, dropping a kiss on Ariana's head and another on Clara's lips, warmth flooding through him. Just enjoying the view. But something in Clara's eyes made him pause. A flicker of nervousness he recognized now, after all these months together. Later that night, after Ariana had gone to bed, they sat together on the balcony overlooking the city lights. The tension Jonas had sensed earlier was building, crackling in the air between them like electricity before a storm. Clara handed him a small wrapped package, her hands trembling slightly in a way that made his pulse quicken. "What's this?" Jonas asked, surprised, studying her face for clues. "Open it and see," Clara replied, an unusual nervousness threading through her voice that set his heart racing. Inside was a first-edition copy of the children's book his grandmother had read to him countless times, the one he'd mentioned once, months ago, in passing. His breath caught in his throat. "How did you find this?" he asked, running his fingers reverently over the worn cover, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "I have my ways," Clara said with a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Read the inscription." Jonas opened the book with trembling hands to find Clara's elegant handwriting on the first page. To Jonas and Ariana, some people save others without realizing they're saving themselves in the process. Thank you for the second chance I didn't know I needed. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure neither of us ever forgets what matters most. All my love, Clara. Below the inscription, nestled in the binding, was a small velvet box. Jonas's world stopped. His heart hammered so loudly he could hear it in his ears. He looked up at Clara, unable to speak, unable to breathe. "I'm not very good at this," Clara admitted, taking the box from him with trembling hands that betrayed her terror. "I've never done it before, but I know that I want to be part of your story, yours and Ariana's, for all the chapters to come." She opened the box with shaking fingers to reveal a simple but elegant ring that caught the city lights and threw them back like captured stars. "I'm not asking to replace anyone or to change what you and Ariana have built together. I'm asking if there might be room for me in your family. Officially. Permanently. Completely." Jonas looked at the woman before him, the woman who had once made his work life miserable, who had transformed herself through sheer determination and love, who now looked at him with such vulnerable hope it made his chest ache. And he knew, with absolute certainty, there was only one possible answer. "There has always been room for you," he said, his voice breaking as he pulled her into his arms. "We were just waiting for you to find your way home." As they held each other under the stars, both thinking of the unlikely, impossible path that had brought them to this moment, Jonas couldn't help but marvel at how everything had changed. How a single act of kindness on a dark night had shattered and rebuilt both their worlds completely. Sometimes the most important crossroads in our lives don't announce themselves with fanfare or warning signs. Sometimes they arrive as inconvenient phone calls on Friday nights, as moments of compassion when resentment would be easier, as second chances given without expectation of return. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to answer those calls, to offer that compassion, to give those second chances, we find ourselves exactly where we're meant to be. With people who were always meant to be part of our story, even when we couldn't see it coming. Even when it seemed impossible. Especially then.